Picture yourself walking through the bustling Forum of Rome on a bright morning in the year 67 AD. Marble statues gleam under the Mediterranean sun, the rumble of wagon wheels echoes over the stone-paved streets, and the scent of exotic spices drifts from the market stalls. But today, none of that captures the crowd's attention. Every gaze turns toward a single figure emerging from the colonnade. Emperor Nero, wrapped in the imperial purple cloak of absolute power, striding confidently beside a young woman of astonishing beauty. She is draped in the finest silks, jewels from the east shimmering with each step, her every movement carrying the elegance of a sculpted masterpiece. And yet, within the murmuring crowd, a shiver runs through the whispers. That is no woman. That was once a boy. The person at the emperor's side is not a noble-born beauty, but Sporus, a former slave of the imperial household, transformed into the living replica of someone long dead. His presence is not the result of romance, but of one man's obsession, grief, and the terrifying reach of unchecked power. The story of Sporus is no mere curiosity from the annals of Roman decadence. It is a chilling testament to how absolute power can bend love into possession, turn loss into madness, and strip away the identity of another human being until nothing remains but a puppet, existing solely to satisfy an emperor's fantasy. But to understand how a boy could be turned into the Empress of Rome, we must go back more than a decade to the moment when a young man named Nero stood at the edge of both glory and darkness. Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus was just 16 years old when fate thrust the laurel crown upon his head. In an empire that stretched from the misty shores of Britannia to the sun-baked deserts of Egypt, the young emperor seemed at first like the herald of a new golden age. His earliest acts won the hearts of the people. He lowered taxes, sponsored grand public entertainments, and even stepped onto the stage himself, performing in plays and music recitals that broke with imperial tradition. The streets of Rome buzzed with hope. Here was a ruler who, unlike his predecessors, seemed to care about the common citizen as much as the senators in their marble halls. But absolute power is like a fire. It can warm or it can consume. Slowly, it began to consume Nero. Being the sole master of an empire meant no one dared to contradict him. No one could restrain him, and no one could remind him of his own fallibility. The political games of the imperial court were laced with treachery, and Nero's paranoia grew. Whispers of plots, some real, others imagined, haunted his every waking moment. Perhaps it was the crushing loneliness of the throne, or the intoxicating realization that his word was law, or simply the gradual corrosion of character that comes when a man is worshipped as a god. Whatever the cause, by the year 65 AD, something in Nero had cracked. The young man who once dreamed of artistic glory now stared out at the world through the eyes of a ruler who trusted no one. And then, into this shifting storm of ambition and insecurity, walked the woman who would ignite both his greatest passion and his darkest spiral, a woman named Poppaea Sabina. Poppaea Sabina was unlike any woman Nero had ever known. Born into a family of status, she possessed not only beauty but also the rare and dangerous gift of ambition. Her hair was the color of ripened wheat, her skin pale as polished marble, and her voice carried the soft, intoxicating rhythm of a practiced seductress. But it was her mind, sharp, calculating, and unyielding, that truly captivated the emperor. When Nero first met her, Poppaea was already married to a man of influence. That, however, was no obstacle in the world of imperial politics. Through a mixture of charm, persuasion, and perhaps calculated cruelty, she maneuvered herself into Nero's inner circle. Soon, the young emperor was enthralled, willing to grant her every wish. To be with her, he divorced his first wife, and to secure her position, he did not hesitate to remove rivals, no matter how close to him they once were. Poppaea became empress, the shining star of Nero's court. Her beauty was paraded through the streets during public ceremonies. Poets compared her to goddesses, and sculptors immortalized her in marble. But behind the veil of elegance, her relationship with Nero was a storm, passionate yet volatile, tender one moment, and cruel the next. And then, in the summer of 65 AD, that storm reached its breaking point. Poppaea, pregnant with Nero's child, argued with him over a trivial Materine argument that, according to ancient accounts, ended with Nero striking her in a fit of rage. The blow proved fatal. The Empress of Rome was gone, leaving behind a grief-stricken emperor, whose sorrow would soon twist into something far more disturbing. For Nero's love for Poppaea did not die with her, and neither, it seemed, did his desire to have her by his side. In the months after Poppaea's death, Nero drifted between bouts of public mourning and private obsession. Rome whispered that the emperor would never love another woman, that no one could replace the empress who had held his heart. But one day, in the midst of his grief, Nero's gaze fell upon someone who stopped him cold. It was a young slave named Sporus. His features were strikingly familiar: delicate cheekbones, soft skin, and eyes that seemed to echo the lost empress. To Nero, it was as if fate had carved Poppaea's likeness into another body, offering him a chance to rewrite the past. What happened next would be recorded by historians with a mix of shock and disbelief. Nero, unable to let go of his obsession, ordered that Sporus be castrated, removing any trace of masculinity, and dressed him in the finest gowns. The emperor called him Papaya, adorned him with jewels once worn by the late empress, and took him everywhere, not as a servant, but as a wife. In public, Sporus was treated as Rome's new empress. Crowds watched in stunned silence as the pair attended ceremonies hand in hand, Nero smiling as if the ghost of Papaya had truly returned to his side. In private, however, the truth was more disturbing. Sporus lived as both a symbol of Nero's undying love and a prisoner of his grief-stricken madness. Rome had seen strange emperors before, but this was something else entirely, an act that blurred the line between devotion and delusion, between love and possession. And it was only the beginning of Nero's descent. By the time Sporus was at Nero's side, the emperor's grip on reality and on his empire was slipping. The boy who had once shown promise as a ruler was gone, replaced by a man intoxicated with power, unchecked desire, and an ever-growing paranoia. Whispers of conspiracy reached his ears daily. Friends became suspects, senators became enemies, and Rome itself began to feel like a stage where everyone played a role in a plot against him. Nero responded not with reason, but with blood. Executions became spectacles, and banishments were handed out like casual favors. His artistic ambitions, once a harmless quirk, turned into an obsession. He forced the elite of Rome to attend his endless performances, plays, poetry, recitals, and singing competitions where no one dared applaud too softly. He raced chariots like a common gladiator, basking in the cheers of crowds who were too terrified not to love him. Meanwhile, the empire trembled under the weight of neglect. Provinces rebelled, legions lost faith, and the Senate plotted in shadows. But Nero seemed blind to it all, wrapped in a fantasy world where his will was law, his art divine, and Sporus dressed as Papaya was the queen of his heart. Yet, empires to have a way of breaking those who believe they are untouchable. And for Nero, the curtain was about to fall. After Nero's death, Rome plunged into chaos. For Mengalba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian would fight for the throne in what became known as the Year of the Four Emperors. Civil war tore through the empire as generals battled for power, each promising stability, each delivering only more blood. Sporus was caught in this storm. He passed from one patron to another, never truly free, his identity forever tied to the whims of powerful men. For some, he was a trophy, a living fragment of Nero's strange, decadent reign. For others, he was a political pawn. And yet, as decades passed, the memory of Nero refused to fade. Whispers claimed he had not truly died, that he would return to reclaim his throne. In the provinces, impostors arose, declaring themselves to be the emperor reborn, hoping to rally the discontented. Historians would argue over Nero's legacy for centuries. Was he a monster who destroyed his empire from within, or a tragic soul crushed beneath the impossible weight of a crown? Whatever the truth, his story remained a warning. Power without restraint can seduce, corrupt, and consume not only those who wield it but those who love them. In the ruins of the golden palace he once built, the wind still whispered his name, and somewhere in that whisper, perhaps, was the faint echo of a song that only Nero believed the world would never forget.